Hey guys, how are we doing today? Hope that everyone's feeling fresh. I know that I am. And welcome to another video by me, yours truly, Val. And I am going to tell you a little story today. Instead of talking about the abstract concepts that I love to talk about, we are going to talk about a little bit about my history. For those of you who do not know, I used to be an alcoholic and a drug addict. I no longer identify with those terms. I know that AA and NA, they will tell you once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, once an addict, always an addict. I do not subscribe to that rhetoric in the slightest, and many people in the AA and NA communities do not like me very much for saying this, and will not like many people for saying things like this, because it doesn't adhere to their box, their dogma. So, because I am currently able to drink in moderation, I can literally have one drink and I can stop and I don't think about it for months after that. So it's completely up to me whether I indulge in a beverage or not. I am not being steered by any disease. In fact, I think that the whole disease concept of AA, of alcoholism, is very, very flawed. But that's a bit of a tangent. That's another story for another video. I am here to tell you more about my short dalliance with one of the most powerful drugs known to man, methamphetamine. Okay, so yeah, meth, guys. it's quite a crazy drug. One of those, if not the most powerful stimulant known to mankind, then one of the most powerful stimulants. And I'm sure you see many stories in the news where people have absolutely, completely messed up their lives and the lives of the people around them through the use of this hardcore drug. Now, just wanted to tell you a little bit about my history with it. I had a few encounters with it before I went on my actual binge. One time I actually ended up meeting with somebody that I knew from Zimbabwe. I was in the University of Pretoria, okay? So when I was 21, I went to uni for the first time, to college, and instead of spending the money that my parents were giving me for groceries, I decided, okay, actually, you know what? I'm going to spend all my money on getting absolutely trashed as often as I possibly can. So a lot of the days I would start, lunchtime when the bars opened and go all the way until 4 or 5 in the morning, after which I'd wake up with the worst hangover, the worst come downs, and just feel like absolute trash. In the period of about 3 months, I lost about 12 kilos. So I went from about 65 kilos to maybe like 53, 52 kilos. I looked like an absolute skeleton. It was crazy. And meth wasn't a super big part of that experience. Meth came later. But what I'm going to tell you is, so I met with somebody that I knew from Zimbabwe. She was actually the cousin of one of my girlfriends, or like one of my first girlfriends. And met up with her, went back to her place, and let's just say, just to make a long story short, I ended up figuring out very quickly that this girl was a call girl. She had become a call girl, and there were a few Johns that were there at her place with one of her call girl friends, and it was just a very interesting time in my life. I couldn't believe it. I'd never been in that situation before. Never been hanging around prostitutes in my life, and there I am hanging out with a prostitute, and also no less a girl that I'd known since she was 12. It was like a very eye-opening situation for me. Now everyone's doing drugs there. One of the Johns is even taking lines off of this friend of hers, boob. That was a mixture of meth and cat, which is methcathinone, like some backyard cocaine. Really horrible stuff as well. They called it fairy dust. Had a few lines myself. And basically, it just ended up in the situation where I was there for like 2 to 3 days, just doing drugs with these people. It was a pretty intense situation. That's where I ended up doing meth for the first time, and it wasn't a very pleasant experience because I just remember feeling really ill. Um, and just not enjoying methamphetamine very much. Later on, I would find out that it was because I was taking too much methamphetamine, and this is why I was feeling rather sickly, because it's way too stimulating. If you've never done it before, you haven't built up a tolerance, it's a very powerfully stimulating drug and can make you feel very like nauseous if you take too much. So didn't get hooked on it during that time. Ended up a month or so after that in rehab. My parents basically came through and were like, "You got a problem, you need help." Went to rehab. And while I was in rehab, I met people who were like, in my eyes, proper drug addicts, because I didn't consider myself a proper addict or proper alcoholic at that time. Sure, I had a problem, definitely looking, back. I had a huge problem for many, many years with drinking and with drugs and altering my consciousness willy-nilly for no reason other than I felt like I was empty inside. And I met proper drug addicts here. These guys were proper meth heads, proper heroin addicts. They're doing the really hardcore stuff. And some of the stories, man, they'd been up for like 2 weeks straight on this stuff. Going proper psychotic, crazy. It's a miracle some of those people were even still alive, given some of the stories that they were telling me, right? So there I go. I'm there. And honestly, one of the thoughts that came to my head is I'm never going to wind up like these people. It's not going to happen. I'm just like, I'm just going through the motions. I'm enjoying my life, and I'm not one of these people. This is never going to happen to me. Could never be the case. And fast forward a few years later, right? I ended up in a situation where I was working at this bar slash restaurant, and a lot of the guys that were working there, they use drugs recreationally, and of course I use drugs recreationally myself. But one of the guys was he turns to me the one day and he's like, "Oh yeah, I just had a bump in the bathroom," and I was like, "Oh dude," because I didn't like cat very much. Sure, I did it every once in a while, but like especially that year, I decided I just didn't want to do it anymore because it just always made me feel horrible. And he's like, no, it's not cat, it's crystal. And I turned to him and I said, like, "Yo, crystal, dude." I did crystal the one time, and honestly, every time because I'd also done it a time after that time that I was hanging out with the prostitutes. I did it afterwards, and I got horribly ill, like violently ill, just puked. It was not a pleasant experience. So I told him, "Look, every time I do this drug, I just get hella sick." And he was like, "No, dude, that's the reason you get sick is because you're doing too much. Okay, you need to just take like the smallest amount that you think you need, and you need to cut it in half because this stuff is really strong." And so he's like, "Give it a shot." And I was like, "Okay, cool, sure." Like, back then I was just like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's just give it a shot. I've done it before. How bad can it be?" And so I go into the bathroom stall with a little cut up straw and a little packet, and I basically take out one of the rocks and I crush it up, and I just like make these two tiny little bumps for each nostril, and I hit this, and I just feel this rush run through me, and I loved it. I absolutely loved this feeling because for me, stimulants had always been too edgy. Like I was always on edge. I was always very anxious. And I felt like meth gave me this sort of like calm stimulation, almost like a combination of a stimulant and a depressant, like an anti-anxiety drug or something like that. So I just became very calm, like very calculated. And I just remember having like just a really great night that night. But one thing I did realize is like really reptilian in the way that you start thinking when you're on something like this, because you start becoming very calculating. You start looking for how to get things from people. It's always been a stimulant thing, I think. Anything that is like your cocaine, they end up being very selfish drugs. Like you just want more of everything. You want more sex, you want more booze, you want more excitement and more power. It really is that kind of like more drug. I think it really inflates that sort of like fire element within you. It makes sense. And yeah, anyway, so I left it at that night, went home. I was actually able to sleep, which is crazy. Normally on stimulants I'm not able to sleep, but on meth for some reason I was able to sleep. Ended up making a mistake of getting the guy's phone number, the supplier's phone number. And there was a guy that I was living with at the time. He had also experimented with meth in the past, and he was excited to join me on doing some of the stuff. But he's sort of like of two minds about it, because obviously, I mean, it is such a powerful drug. And so I remember we were out the one night. And I said to him, "Do you want to get a pack of this stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, let's split it." It was so cheap, guys. It's like 200 rand. How much is 200 rand? It's like it's probably like $15, between $15 and $20. It's really not much. And I just remember going out into the car park from the club where we were at, the bars and clubs, going into the car, and I got the stuff from him, had a nice look at it. It was just like glass, man. I mean, it wasn't blue, but this was as close to Breaking Bad stuff as you could probably get. It looked, as if, from a druggie's perspective, it looked amazing. Absolutely amazing. Just these clear crystals. And I asked him, I was like, "Oh, dude, so you must be the supplier because this stuff is so cheap and so high quality." And he just kind of like looked at me, and I realized that I had asked way too many questions. I just gave him the money. I said, "Don't worry, thank you so much," and I just left. And so started this little binge that I went on. Funny enough, it actually ended up being advantageous because it was like the beginning of the end of my drug use. Because remember, I told you that I was never going to wind up like those people in that rehab. Well, here I was, doing the exact opposite of what I'd said all those years ago. Yeah, here I am doing meth. So we did some that night, went to the bathroom, did a couple of bumps, went home later that evening, carried on hanging out, listening to music, watching videos, doing bumps, discussing philosophy. Yes, this is what we used to do on drugs. We used to like discuss deep philosophical concepts and constructs and the deeper meanings of life, me and this guy that I used to live with. It was really, really, at the time, a lot of fun and just really crazy time in my existence. He actually got quite paranoid. He says, "Dude, I think you need to just go into that bathroom and flush the stuff down the toilet." And I was like, "Yeah, no, don't worry, dude. I'll flush it down the toilet." But I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And so, that night, what did I do? Because that's what you do when you're on lots of stimulants, or at least what I did when I was on lots of stimulants. I just ended up watching like a bunch of porn. And I think, just watching porn for like 4 to 6 hours. Went to bed in the early hours of the morning. Woke up Didn't feel bad at all. But then I remember I didn't do any for the first part of the day. And then for the first time in my entire life, I actually crushed up a little bit that day, and I snorted some. And basically started my day off on drugs again. Really enjoying the high. Thought that I was completely in control of myself. And so began this sort of 5-day binge of mine, where I didn't stop. It was just this entire few days of just complete debaucherous behavior. I was obviously still smoking my weed, so getting up, smoking my weed, doing meth, going out drinking from lunchtime till however long I could go drinking for, because also the fact of the matter is I didn't get drunk when I was on this meth. So it just gave me this insane staying power, able to drink more than everybody else, competing with everybody else whilst I'm drinking, chasing girls. All of this stuff was facilitated by this drug-fueled bonanza. And it was quite effective because it did raise my confidence. When you're in a place like that where you just feel so empty and so hopeless and so down in the dumps, then drugs like that have a very easy place to take hold. I don't know how I would react to methamphetamine if I was to take it now, because obviously being in such a good place that I am, living such a fulfilled life, I don't know if it would take the same hold as it did during that time, because it gave me confidence that I didn't have, or at least I thought that's what it was doing, or giving me at least the permission to have confidence in myself where there was none. And so, during that time, I speaking to girls that in ways that I would never have been able to without, at least, again, it made me think that. Able to party more than anything, and also just to be completely blissfully unaware of the consequences of anything that I was doing. It's not like I did anything particularly bad during that time in terms of like hurting people, manipulating people,